Today is our first foray into white on black drawing technique. What we will be creating is this card that has a gradient value scale on one side from pure white to pure black, and on the other side, a bunch of water droplets drawn within a 1-inch border. Make sure to save this card for future use because we will use the value scale to check values and potentially practice textures in the space below before placing them on your final piece. For supplies, you will need a black piece of paper, a 2B graphite pencil, a Prismacolor white colored pencil, a manual pencil sharpener, and a 1-inch border maker. First things first, you will need to trace the 1-inch border maker on the top edge of the card. Line it up with the top border and trace the bottom line using your 2B graphite pencil. The reason why we have this at the top of the card is so that when we're working on the final, it will be easier to directly compare values. There are 4 keys to having a smooth gradient turn out well in this technique. 1. The pencil tip is always kept extremely sharp. 2. The marks are applied in small circles right on the tip of the pencil. 3. The values are built up brighter and brighter very gradually in layers. And 4. The pressure is carefully controlled at all times. More pressure leads to brighter values, less pressure leads to darker values. In our value scale, we are starting on the left side with the pure white values and working to the right side with pure black values. To begin, I start in the far left side creating small circular marks with very little pressure to get a good initial coat down. As I go further and further right, I fade my pressure out more and more to the point where the tip of the pencil is barely touching the paper. Then, once I have faded out as much as possible, I go back to the far left and push a bit harder initially, gradually fading out as I go. This process is repeated over and over until the scale transitions very gradually from pure white on the left to pure black on the right, with all the values in between. The purest white section furthest left will have been applied at this point with as much pressure as possible, and the pure black section on the far right will be left the value of the paper. Now and then it is good to hold the card at arm's length to see how the values are shifting and if there are any areas that will need to be touched up. Throughout this process, the pencil will become dulled relatively often, so you'll need to sharpen it using the manual pencil sharpeners in the larger hole of the two. Never use the electric pencil sharpeners with these white pencils because they will mess up both the pencil and the sharpener. Once you are done with this side, we will flip the card over and trace the 1-inch border maker on all 4 sides. Within this small rectangle, we will use the graphite pencil to sketch out different circles and blobs of various sizes to plan out where our water droplets will be. Make sure to cover the space well, not leaving too much negative space between the droplets or around the edges. I would also recommend adding a few that are cropped off by the border. To show you how to make a realistic water droplet, I will show you the step-by-step technique for just one specific droplet. In this example, the light source is coming from the upper right-hand corner. The first thing that we need to do with the white colored pencil is to draw the circular highlight hitting the droplet in the upper right-hand section of the droplet. Apply lots of pressure on this to make it as bright as possible. Then, we will begin filling in the reflected light along the lower left-hand edge. Make sure that your pencil is as sharp as it can be to fill this in with as little pressure as possible in tiny circular marks right on the tip of the pencil like so. As you go from the bottom left-hand section of the droplet up to the highlight, gradually fade these marks out with your pressure as you did before on the gradient part. Once your first pass is finished, you then go back to the lower left-hand section and press slightly harder with the same mark-making technique, and then fade this into the main section of the droplet. Repeat this process until you have this light portion along the edge that is lightest here and then gradually fades out as it gets nearer and nearer to the highlight. When this process is complete for all droplets, you should have something that looks a bit like this. Be sure to take your time, gradually layering the values lighter and lighter with a sharp pencil in order to have a well-executed project when you are finished.
Honey.
Jerome's in the house, watch your mouth. Jerome's in the house.